This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
I know that the Lions and the Bucs is going to get most of the hype for tonight on Monday Night Football for this doubleheader. But I'm actually really excited about this Texans and Seahawks game too, because I think that there are some pretty fun players on both sides in that game. I've got hopefully a strong read on the spread in that one too, and I've got some bets that I like in that one. So honestly, I think both these games are going to be a lot of fun. Now, honestly, one of them is also way after my bedtime, so that might be tough. Maybe I'll have to watch that one on DVR in the morning, but I think it's going to be a really fun night with two really cool football games. Today, we're going to dive in to both those games, lay out my read on them at FanDuel Sportsbook, identify some bets that we like for tonight in both those games, and include an SGP that I like for the Seahawks and the Texans here today. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, here to break down my thoughts on the Week 7 Monday Night Football doubleheader. We got the Bucs and the Lions, followed by Texans and Seahawks. Going to break down both those games and discuss where I'm seeing value at FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll dive into those in just 1 second, but first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page Monday through Friday during the NFL and college football season. Tomorrow, going to break down my thoughts on every single NFL Week 8 game, talking spreads and totals, what I predict for those, where we're seeing value at FanDuel Sportsbook, college football Wednesday, NFL Thursday, NFL player props Friday, all right here in the exact same place. So go subscribe to the Covering the Spread podcast feed or the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. Leave us a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We appreciate everyone tuning in as always. FanDuel's getting ready for kickoff with an offer you won't want to miss. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 to use in bonus bets all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style, FanDuel has you covered. NFL season is finally here. Only question is, are you ready to play? Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's begin things now with the first game for tonight. That is the Buccaneers at the Lions. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, the Lions favored by 6.5. That is out from 5.5 earlier on this week. And the total in this game, 53.5. And if you weren't paying attention over the weekend, some pretty big injury news here for the Buccaneers is that Emeka Egbuka actually might play. Now, the fact that this number has gone to 6.5 from 5.5 says to me that probably ain't going to happen. And frankly, I didn't think he would anyway, because leading into a game a couple weeks ago, this is before Chris Godwin and Tristan Wirfs were back, Todd Bowles said, yeah, there's a chance that these guys could play. And that always smelled a little fishy because they didn't seem like they had a chance to suit up. So I know Egbuka did practice on Saturday, which implies he has a chance. Adam Schefter said there's a real chance. I don't think there's a chance personally. And I'm going to treat this as if Egbuka is not going to go. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think the Buccaneers are interesting here. I've got the Lions by 4.4 in my model for this game, which does imply there's a bit of value on the 6.5 for the Buccaneers. It is minus 115 though. So I think if you're going to bet the Bucs, maybe you're looking at like an alt spread somewhere in there. Maybe you're looking at a money line of them. Plus 215 is not the best number by any means. I think they were plus 230 yesterday morning. So I don't see enough value to bite in the Bucs from a spread perspective. Total at 52.8. It's 53.5. So not going to bet that one either way, but slight lean towards the Buccaneers with the way things stand. No read on the total from me, but do think the Buccaneers will be efficient. I want to start things off, though, by talking about the Lions side of the football with our first bet for this game. This game is indoors, and whenever the Detroit Lions are indoors, I'm going to have interest in Jameson Williams because he is a massive big play threat who gets to play on turf and not dealing with wind in this game. He's also got a good matchup because the Buccaneers are a team, and they've been this way the entire time that Todd Bowles has been there, where they are better against the run than they are against the pass, which means we're probably going to see a bit more passing volume out of the Lions tonight than what we typically see from them. That bodes well for volume for Jameson Williams. And honestly, you could see in the Chiefs game last week, the Lions, I think, kind of want to get J-Mo cooking a bit. They gave him 7 total targets in that game, and only one of those was deep. And honestly, typically I want deep targets. For a guy like J-Mo, where I know he can catch the deep ball, I want the bunnies. I want the easy targets that can get him short wins, get the ball in his hands, and then let him do J-Mo stuff. They did that last week. And that, to me, is really intriguing for him. So you look at Jameson Williams' alt markets, he is plus 200 to get 70 plus receiving yards. This is, again, for a guy who is dynamic with the ball in his hands. They're trying to get him more buddy targets. And after the catch, he can do some crazy stuff. He can also catch a long ball and get 70 yards in one play. That's also possible here for sure. It's in a matchup where I think we'll see a bit more passing volume from Detroit despite the spread. So to me, getting J-Mo 70 plus yards at 2-1, I find that pretty interesting. And that's the first bet I want to make in this game. So we're going to take Jameson Williams, 70 plus receiving yards, 2-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook for this one. I also do think that the Bucs are going to be effective on offense, though. That is even with I'm assuming no Ibuka for this game, but they are going to have Mike Evans coming out that hamstring injury, maybe not 100%. But either way, I do think we'll see an effective version of the Buccaneers passing offense in this game. And right now, Baker Mayfield's passing prop, 250.5. That is up from 248.5 earlier on this morning. So it does seem like there is some market enthusiasm for Baker Mayfield right now, but I get it based on the way he has played. And that's not just what he's done this year. We have seen this year after year where Baker Mayfield loses pieces. Last year they had the Chris Godwin injury. Mike Evans missed a couple of games in there too. And even when it was Jalen McMillan and a bunch of other dudes like Kate Otten and stuff like that and Bucky Irving, Baker was still pretty efficient. I didn't win a lot of those games, but Baker was efficient in those games. And it's not as if the Bucs are the only team banged up here. This Lions secondary wanted Brian Branch. He is suspended. They won't have a lot of other top corners in this game. Kirby Joseph is banged up too. So they're facing a secondary, I believe it's about like 5 of their top 6 overall players. That's a pretty fun setup for a team that, again, has proven that they can be efficient even when they're missing some of their top pieces. So I look at this matchup here for the Buccaneers, and I see the Lions pretty good against opposing running backs. The Buccaneers are also missing their best early down guy in Bucky Irving. Rashad White, much more of a pass catching back. He's been good early down so far this year, to his credit. He's looked impressive filling in for Bucky, but Rashad White's strength is in the passing game. So we got a matchup where the Lions pretty good against the run. The Buccaneers personnel in the backfield says they should pass more, and they've shown they can be efficient when they do pass, even when there are no injuries. And Baker does have Mike Evans, so it's not as if the cupboard is entirely bare here. That's enough for me. So Baker Mayfield passing prop, again, is pretty high at 250.5 over at minus 112. I do still think that is a fair number to get him at. So I'm going to take Baker Mayfield over 250.5 passing yards, minus 112, because Baker has proven to me he is a guy who can get the job done even when his weapons are banged up. And again, this Detroit secondary is down a lot of pieces too. So I'm going to take Baker, ride with him tonight because he's proven to me he is worthy of that trust at this point. So the two bets that I like here for the Buccaneers and the Lions, Baker Mayfield over 250.5 passing yards, minus 112. We'll go to the Jameson Williams alt receiving yardage prop over 70.5 receiving yard or 70 plus receiving yards at 2-1. I show a bit more value in the second game, and that's more in the traditional markets. Let's turn our focus now to the Seahawks and the Texans. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, the Seahawks favored by 3, and the total in this game is 41.5. This was 3.5 earlier on this week. It's a pretty light 3. It's minus 104 right now. It's not a ton of movement towards the Texans, but a bit there. Total has gone up a point to 41.5. I agree with that movement. We talked about this back on Tuesday's show last week. This was my favorite bets of the week, was taking the over in this game. That's because I show a lot of value in the Texans offense in this game. So I could take the Texans. We'll talk about taking them later on. But if I take the over for the full game, that gets me exposure to Sam Darnold and the Seahawks, who have also played really well so far this year. So by taking the over 41.5, I get to benefit if Sam Darnold is efficient against this Texans defense, who is very, very good, but gettable given that they are on the road in this game. So if I were to place one bet in this game, it would be on the over. Still 41.5 at minus 105. It has gone up, but I do think there is good value in that number. So for me, the best bet in this game, Texans versus Seahawks, will be the over 41.5 at minus 105. Of course, some somewhat big news here is that the Texans will not have Christian Kirk. He got banged up midweek with a hamstring injury. And when I put in those downgrades, I still have the Seahawks by just one and the total of 44.9. So still leaning towards the Texans. We've talked a lot in the show about how for an SGP, if I want to build out an SGP for a game, I want to build around a single assumption, because then I can benefit from like, hey, if I assume that this is correct, here are things that are more likely to happen when that occurs. And we're going to get to an SGP for this game. But the overall assumption for me is that the Texans offense plays well. That's why I like the over. That's why I like the Texans +3. And that's why we're going here overall. So I want to find some routes to getting exposure to the Texans offense. With that said, that's still pretty risky because they haven't been consistent so far this year. The offensive line is going on the road to face on a Texans defense or a Seahawks defensive line that is pretty dang good. So there's a lot of risk in buying into the Texans. So what I want to do personally when buying into Houston is do so via reducing my bet size and taking bigger swipes, taking some longer shots as ways that, okay, let's say the Texans are efficient. Here are some things that may occur if that were to happen. So we're going to take some long shots here. And as always, long shots are long shots for a reason. These are events that are not super likely to occur because bookmakers are very good at their jobs. So with that in mind, let's dig in and identify some ways we can buy in this Texans offense, reducing our bet size, but getting a bigger payoff for the risk we are taking on by buying into them. To me, I think the best route for doing so is via the anytime touchdown mark. And there are a couple ways you could do so. I don't mind Woody Marks at +240. I think that's one route you could go. However, Jalen Noel checks in at 8-1 to score in this game. The reason I want to go towards Noel specifically is the way the mechanics of the Christian Kirk injury occurred. That injury occurred in the middle of the week, which means the Texans spent their bye and the initial part, the game plan installation part of this week, thinking Christian Kirk would be available for this game. Suddenly, he is not. So the question is, do you scrap the entire game plan? Or do you take the guy in Jalen Noel who is well built to operate in the slot and just put him in the slot? Because if you're moving Nico Collins, Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, one of those guys to the slot in every play, that's going to change your game plan a lot more than just inserting Jalen Noel into that slot position. I also think that the gap between Higgins and Noel isn't quite as big as what a lot of people or what the bookmakers are implying based on the gap between their odds for tonight. Noel has just 3 fewer targets than Higgins so far this year. In their final game before the bye, he ran only 5 fewer routes than Higgins. It was 16 routes for Higgins versus 11 for Noel. Granted, that gap was 12-6 through 3 quarters. So that game did get way out of hand against Baltimore. So they did work in Noel after that game got a little bit wonky, and that did inflate his numbers. But again, he is the preferred slot guy over Jaden Higgins based on what they've shown us so far. So to me, that says Noel could play a lot of snaps in this game. He is a rookie who is very talented. He is very athletic. They have had him do some kick returns and stuff like that this year. So they do want the ball in his hands. And I do think that matters. So there's a lot of risk in Noel because there's no guarantee he gets the slot role. I don't think he's going to be an every down player by any means, but there is a possibility that he does. And we're getting him at a pretty big discount right now. So as things stand, Jalen Noel 8-1 to score. I think that's pretty fun for a talented rookie who has been earning more work in this offense as the year has gone along, and allows you to buy in this Texans offense and buy into the over in getting a pretty big bite at the apple. So I do like this quite a bit. Jalen Noel to score 8-1. I think that's intriguing given the Kirk injury, when that injury occurred, and the fact that Noel is well positioned to fill that role with Kirk being out. So I do like Noel to score 8-1. I don't want to go with just Noel, though, because it's kind of like, okay, if I'm riding the Texans, I want a couple bites at the apple, a couple ways I can benefit. The other touchdown prop that I like for the Texans is CJ Stroud at plus 950. And part of that's because I'm just higher on the Texans offense than the market is. So that's playing a role here. But also, Stroud is running a bit more this year than he has in the past. He's averaging 24.4 rushing yards per game this year versus 13.7 last year and under 12 when he was a rookie. We saw Stroud in college do this thing where when he had his back against the wall, he would run then and only then. And this year, with the offensive line being a little bit wonky, that's kind of been the case. He's realized if I want to take this offense to a new level, I got to run a bit more. That has not led to a touchdown yet, but again, it's led to more yardage. And that's why I think that Stroud could be a lot of fun. Now, the yardage prop for Stroud, I don't think is that intriguing because the Seahawks are pretty good at suppressing opposing quarterback rush attempts. So I don't want to go there. I want, again, a lower bet size that allows me to benefit more should I wind up being right. And I think that does look pretty good for Stroud. Now, he was 11-1 last night, down to plus 950 now. I still think that's a value. My anytime touchdown model has him at plus 870 as a fair number for him. I think that's enough value here. So CJ Stroud to score plus 950, another route for buying into the Texans based on the fact that I think that they will be efficient in this game, think they can put up some points, and Stroud is running more than he used to. Maybe that does translate to a touchdown in this game. So the two touchdown props for the Texans, both kind of long shots, but I do like them for very different reasons. Taking Jalen Noel 8-1 and CJ Stroud plus 950 as the two bets there. As alluded to, I do think we can get to an SGP in this game because I feel pretty strongly that the Texans are being a bit underrated. So I can take the angle of, okay, why do I think the Texans are underrated and what things are likely to occur should that happen? We'll start with taking the over 41.5 because it's largely driven by this Texans offense being, at least in my eyes, underrated. We'll add in the +3 at minus 104. You could take the money line if you want, but again, Seahawks are a pretty good team too. So I want to give them that respect and acknowledge that this game has pretty decent odds to fall exactly on 3. We at least get a push in that leg if that does happen. Maybe they lose by 2.5 or 1.5. I think that happens pretty often because I do respect the Seahawks. I respect Sam Darnold. So I'll put the +3 in this leg here as opposed to money line, but I do show value in the money line as well. The final leg I want to add in here, you could add the touchdown prop if you want to get really crazy, but a more baseline level prop that plays into the assumption that the Texans offense plays well, is efficient, and is able to move the football. That's CJ Stroud's passing yards, 227.5 over his minus 114. I don't know though if they'll be able to run the ball hyper efficiently here because the Seahawks, again, have a very good defensive front, and I don't trust this Texans offensive line. So they could struggle to get things moving on the ground, which could funnel more work through the air, but I think the Texans can be pretty effective in that regard. So we'll take CJ Stroud passing yardage over 227.5 as the third leg here. If we add those together, over 41.5, Texans +3, and the Stroud passing yardage over, that grades out to +349 at FanDuel Sportsbook for the SGP. And I do think that makes a lot of sense. So we'll have that as a final bet here for this game and for tonight. So 3 different ways to buy in the Texans: this SGP, the CJ Stroud touchdown prop, the Jalen Noel touchdown prop. We can reduce our bet size on those. So if the Texans totally collapse, it's not going to hurt us all that much, but still benefit if they do wind up playing efficiently in this game. I think it could be via one of those routes. Of course, it could be just Nico Collins going for $150 all by himself, and maybe we don't get the Noel or the Stroud touchdowns, but I think this is a fun way to buy into the Texans and hopefully benefit from the model being correct on them here. All right. So again, recapping for tonight, taking this SGP over 41.5, Texans +3, CJ Stroud over 227.5 passing yards. That is +349. Stroud to score +950. Noel to score 8-1. Taking Baker Mayfield over 250.5 passing yards at -112, and Jameson Williams 70+ receiving yards at 2-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. As mentioned, back again tomorrow. Going to break down my thoughts on every single NFL Week 8 game, going through the spreads and totals of FanDuel Sportsbook, laying out early bets that I like. To get that as it is posted, subscribe to the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page, but also check us out on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. If you got any questions for me, I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. I am on Threads at Jim.Sannes, and you can follow FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets on Monday Night Football. Back again tomorrow for our Week 8 first look. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.